Clara's evenings had become predictable. Office lights fading into the grey of her apartment, quiet meals eaten alone, and nights where silence pressed in heavier than sleep. When Yusuf's first message appeared, it seemed harmless. His words carried warmth she hadn't felt in years, a gentleness wrapped in the confidence of a man who spoke as if he already knew her heart. "Loneliness is only temporary," he wrote once, "but when two souls are destined, oceans cannot separate them." Clara read those lines over and over. He called her beautiful, not in the hollow way men on dating apps did, but with sincerity, as if he saw beyond the photographs. Slowly, conversations turned into late-night calls, and the sound of his voice felt like shelter. He spoke of his culture, his family, and the strength of a bond that could not be broken. She confessed her fears, how her life felt small, how she craved change. Yusuf listened without judgment. "You are meant for more, Clara," he told her. "Come here, let me show you a life where you will never be forgotten again." The idea lodged itself in her mind, like a spark refusing to die. Friends warned her, their voices layered with suspicion. "You barely know him," her best friend whispered. Her mother's tone carried quiet dread. "Yemen is not safe. Please, Clara, think carefully." But the more they pushed, the deeper Clara dug into her certainty. She needed this, needed him. Yusuf promised her marriage, a family, a forever she couldn't imagine in her grey apartment. The risk felt smaller than the emptiness she already carried. The day she booked the ticket, her hands shook, but excitement pulsed stronger than fear. She packed carefully, folding dreams between dresses, leaving a letter on her mother's kitchen table. She couldn't bear the confrontation, only the belief that one day her family would understand. The airport smelled of coffee and departures. As the plane lifted into the clouds, Clara closed her eyes, imagining Yusuf waiting, his arms wide, the future already unfolding. She pictured sunlit mornings, a home filled with laughter, and the comfort of belonging at last. Hours later, the plane began its descent. Clara pressed her forehead to the small window. The landscape below stretched in hues of sand and stone, foreign and mesmerizing. Heat greeted her as soon as the cabin doors opened, wrapping around her with a force that felt almost alive. Her heart thudded when she spotted him. Yusuf stood tall, near the arrival's gate, white shirt crisp, eyes fixed only on her. His smile broke the distance, like a promise kept. "Clara," he breathed when she reached him, taking her hand with both of his. All the doubt scattered. His presence was real, warm, commanding. She let him guide her toward the exit, her suitcase trailing behind like a forgotten burden. Outside, the air carried spice and dust. Clara stepped into it, hope swelling despite the unease prickling at the edges. The car door opened. She slid inside, the city already blurring into unknown roads ahead. The drive wound through narrow streets, buildings pressed close together, their faded paint cracked beneath the weight of heat. Clara leaned against the window, watching unfamiliar signs written in Arabic blur past. Yusuf kept one hand steady on the wheel, the other resting lightly over hers. "You are safe now," he said. "No more loneliness." She smiled, reassured by his confidence, though the streets felt like a maze she could never escape alone. The house appeared modest, hidden behind a rusted gate. Yusuf lifted her suitcase with ease and led her inside. The walls were bare, the air heavy with spice and smoke. A single rug stretched across the floor, and a kettle hissed faintly in the corner. Clara forced a smile. It wasn't the grand palace she had imagined, but his hand in hers made it easier to pretend. Yusuf pulled her close. "This is home now, our beginning." For days, he filled the rooms with charm. He cooked for her, spoke of wedding plans, kissed her forehead tenderly before sleep. Clara felt fragile relief. Maybe her family had been wrong. Maybe this was what love looked like in a different shape. But soon, subtle cracks began to show. He corrected her speech when she stumbled over Arabic words, his smile fading into sharpness. "You must learn quickly. A wife of mine cannot sound ignorant." When she suggested calling her mother, his expression hardened. "Later, they will not understand us. Right now, it is only you and me." She laughed nervously, brushing it aside, though unease pooled in her chest. One evening, Yusuf's mother arrived. A woman draped in black from head to toe, her eyes sharp, unreadable. She glanced at Clara as if weighing her like a piece of faulty cloth. No greeting came, no smile, only silence and the rustle of fabric as she moved through the room. After she left, Clara whispered, "She doesn't like me." Yusuf's jaw clenched. "You are mine. Her opinion means nothing. Do not doubt me again." His tone was calm but final, a wall she dared not push against. The days grew heavier. Yusuf began locking the front gate each time he left. At first he told her it was for her safety, that strangers might harm her if she wandered alone. "The streets are dangerous for women," he explained. But when she tried to open the gate one morning, she found it bolted tight. Her heart stumbled. She hadn't noticed before how complete his control was. "Why lock me in?" she asked when he returned. Yusuf kissed her hand, his voice coated in sweetness. "Because you are too precious to lose. One day you will thank me." Her laughter caught in her throat, forced. The cage wasn't visible yet, but the walls had begun to close. Nights shifted too. Yusuf would sit in silence, watching her with a gaze that felt less like love and more like ownership. When she asked if he was upset, his reply was sharp. "A wife does not question. She obeys." Clara nodded, though her stomach twisted. She wanted to believe the tenderness would return, that the man who spoke of destiny still lived inside him. But as the days blurred, she realized the warmth was fading, replaced with rules she hadn't agreed to. Eat this, wear that, speak only when spoken to. Each command chipped away at the woman who had once stepped off a plane believing in forever. One night, as Yusuf turned the key in the gate with practiced ease, Clara pressed her palm to the window bars, staring at the narrow street beyond. Freedom lingered just a few steps away, yet impossibly out of reach. Behind her, Yusuf's voice cut through the silence. "Remember, Clara, everything you are now belongs to me." The words settled cold in the room, foreshadowing the darkness yet to come. The first time Yusuf raised his voice, it startled Clara more than it hurt. She had asked for his phone to send a short message to her mother. His expression shifted from calm to thunder in a heartbeat. "You still think of them, after everything I give you?" His hand slammed against the table, rattling the dishes. Clara flinched. "I only want them to know I'm safe." "You are safe because of me," he snapped, his voice low but shaking with fury. "Do not forget that." For days, silence hung heavy. Yusuf withdrew, answering her words with grunts, his eyes scanning her like a warden assessing a prisoner. Clara tried to mend the rift, cooking for him, smiling when her heart wasn't in it, but nothing softened him. One evening, when she mentioned wanting to step outside for air, his composure cracked. "You don't trust me," he whispered, pacing the room. "You want to leave, to shame me, like all the others." "There are no others," Clara said, trembling. "I'm here. I chose you." His face twisted. "You chose me?" "No, Clara. I chose you." Before she could react, his grip closed around her wrist, dragging her through the hallway. She stumbled, pleading, but his strength was merciless. He shoved open a door she hadn't noticed before, metal bars glinting faintly in the dim light. At the center stood a cage. Cold fear spread through her veins. "Yusuf, what is this?" His breath was unsteady, his eyes burning with obsession. "It is the only way to keep you, to teach you. You will stay here, until you understand." "No, please," Clara cried, pulling back. But his shove sent her tumbling inside. The clang of metal behind her sealed the nightmare. The cage was barely large enough to sit upright. Rust scratched her arms as she pressed against the bars. Yusuf's shadow loomed over her, his voice calm now, almost tender. "This is love, Clara. Obedience is love. Without it, you destroy everything." He left, the lock clicking like a sentence. The hours bled together in suffocating stillness. Hunger clawed at her stomach, her throat parched. When Yusuf returned, he tossed scraps of bread and a bottle half filled with water. Clara clutched them like treasure, hating herself for the relief. "You see," Yusuf said softly, "I provide, you live because of me." Tears blurred her vision. This isn't love. His eyes narrowed, and for a moment she thought he would strike her, but instead he crouched, pressing his face near the bars. One day, you'll thank me. One day, you'll see. Nights stretched longer, broken only by Yusuf's footsteps echoing through the hall. Sometimes he stood outside the cage, staring without a word. Other times he spoke for hours, ranting about betrayal, about women who abandoned men like him. Clara realized his world was built on wounds she could never heal. Her body weakened, but her mind clung desperately to fragments of strength. She whispered her mother's name under her breath, replayed memories of laughter with friends, sunlight through her childhood window. Anything to remind herself she existed beyond these bars. Yet despair crept in. What if no one found her? What if this was forever? One night as Yusuf unlocked the cage to shove in stale food, Clara's voice cracked through the silence. "Yusuf, if you love me, why hurt me?" For a moment, uncertainty flickered across his face. Then it vanished, swallowed by the same cold certainty. "Because you must learn," he whispered. The lock snapped shut again. Clara curled against the bars, her body aching, her hope dimming. Somewhere deep inside, a fragile thought began to grow. Survival would not come from Yusuf's mercy. It would have to come from her. The days blurred into fragments, light spilling through a crack in the ceiling, Yusuf's footsteps approaching, the scrape of a dish against the bars. Clara no longer knew how long she had been inside. Her body told the story, ribs pressing against skin, hair falling in clumps, lips cracked from thirst. Every movement felt heavier. Still, she forced herself to stay alert. Yusuf's temper was unpredictable. Sometimes he arrived with soft words, stroking the bars as if they were her skin. Other times he hurled insults, accusing her of plotting escape, of betraying him without ever leaving. Clara learned silence was her shield. She rationed every crumb he gave her, hiding half beneath the filthy cloth she used as bedding. Hunger gnawed at her constantly, but she whispered to herself, "Save it, survive." When Yusuf's cousin appeared one afternoon, Clara's heart pounded. She had heard muffled voices in the house, but she hadn't seen another soul in weeks. The cousin stepped into the hallway, his eyes sweeping briefly across the cage. For a second his face faltered. Her throat burned, but she forced the words out, barely audible. "Help me." The cousin froze. Yusuf's shadow filled the doorway, his laughter sharp. "She plays tricks," he told the cousin. "She tests me. Don't listen." The cousin nodded stiffly, though his gaze lingered a moment too long. Then he left, his sandals tapping against the floor until the sound vanished. Clara sank back against the bars, despair weighing heavier than her body. But that flicker of recognition in his eyes, hesitation, guilt, became a fragile thread of hope. That night, Yusuf knelt by the cage, speaking as though nothing had happened. "You are mine, Clara. Out there, no one will understand you. They will hurt you. Only I can protect you." She forced herself to nod, her voice barely a whisper. "I know." The lie tasted bitter, but Yusuf's shoulders relaxed. He wanted obedience, and she would give him enough to keep him careless. Her survival became strategy. She studied his routines, the time he left the house, the way his hand shook when he drank, how the lock sometimes clicked loosely if he was distracted. Each detail etched into her mind, not as escape yet, but as preparation. Her body weakened, but her spirit began to shift. She was no longer only a victim waiting for mercy. She was a prisoner, learning her captor's cracks. Sometimes she whispered her mother's name into the darkness. Other times she whispered Yusuf's, soft as a prayer, so he believed her submission. Inside she repeated different words: stay alive, watch, wait. The days remained brutal. The scraps of bread grew smaller, the water more stale. Clara's reflection in a shard of metal looked like a ghost. She barely recognized, but ghosts could endure. Ghosts could linger until the living made mistakes. One evening, Yusuf stumbled in, his eyes bloodshot, muttering about betrayal. The cousin had questioned him, pressed too hard. Yusuf paced, ranting, forgetting to fasten the lock tightly before storming out. Clara's heart jolted. She didn't move yet, her strength wasn't ready, her chance not certain. But for the first time, the cage didn't feel permanent. Somewhere, cracks were forming in Yusuf's control, and through those cracks, survival whispered her name. Yusuf's once certain stride grew uneven. Clara noticed it first in his eyes, dark circles spreading like bruises, his gaze darting to shadows, as if the walls whispered accusations. He still locked her cage, still threw scraps of bread at her feet, but the certainty that once coated his voice had begun to crack. He muttered to himself when pacing the hall. Words about betrayal, curses aimed at invisible enemies. Clara sat still, listening carefully, piecing together fragments. He feared exposure. He feared that someone, perhaps his cousin, had seen too much. One evening, Yusuf stumbled in, smelling of alcohol, his shirt unbuttoned, hair disheveled. Clara had never seen him like this before. Untidy, vulnerable, he collapsed against the cage, his head resting on the cold bars. "You don't understand," he slurred. "They all leave. Everyone leaves." Her voice, soft but steady, slipped through the silence. "I haven't left." He lifted his head, eyes glassy. "But you will. They always do." Clara leaned forward, careful, her heart pounding. "Not if you keep me safe." For a moment, relief softened his face. Then suspicion snapped back, his features hardening. "You lie." He struck the bars with his fist, the sound echoing. Clara flinched but kept her eyes lowered. When he finally staggered away, she exhaled slowly. Each slip, each drunken word revealed more of the cracks splintering through his control. The cousin returned days later, carrying a bag Yusuf demanded. His eyes flicked to Clara, lingering just long enough for her to whisper again, almost inaudible, "Please." He swallowed hard, shifting uncomfortably before turning away. Yusuf noticed. His anger boiled over after the cousin left. He grabbed Clara by the shoulders through the bars, shaking her. "You poisoned him with your eyes. Do you think anyone will save you? No one defies me." Clara choked back fear, whispering, "I only see you." The words calmed him like a drug. He released her, breathing hard. "Remember that. Only me." Clara collapsed onto the cloth once he left, trembling. But a realization bloomed inside her. His paranoia made him sloppy. His cousin's unease was a fracture Yusuf could not patch. Nights grew louder. Yusuf's rants echoed through the hall, sometimes ending with him hurling bottles against the wall. Clara counted the moments when he forgot the lock, when the chain hung looser than before. She practiced pushing quietly against the bars, testing every creak. She whispered plans to herself under her breath. "If the cousin comes again, speak louder. If Yusuf drinks, wait for the door. Watch his hands, his eyes. Survive his storms." One night, Yusuf demanded she call him her savior. His eyes blazed, his voice desperate. "Say it, Clara. Say I saved you." Her lips trembled, but she obeyed. "You saved me." For a heartbeat he smiled, then turned away, muttering, "Liar." The cage door rattled as he left in a fury. Forgetting to secure the lock fully, Clara stared at the dangling chain, her pulse racing. Freedom hovered inches away, terrifying in its possibility. She didn't move yet, but she knew the time to wait was ending. The cracks in Yusuf's world were widening, and soon she would step through them. The night air inside the house was thick with smoke and broken glass. Yusuf had spent the evening pacing, ranting, drinking until his words blurred together. Clara stayed still in the cage, her breath shallow, waiting for the storm to pass. When he finally staggered toward the door, muttering curses, she heard the faint clink of the chain left loose. Her heart hammered. She waited until his footsteps faded, the slam of the outer door echoing. Silence pressed in. Slowly, carefully, she reached for the lock. It gave under her trembling fingers. The door creaked open. Clara froze, listening. No sound of Yusuf's return. Only the steady hum of the night. She crawled out, her legs shaking, weak from months of confinement. The floor felt foreign beneath her bare feet. Every step toward the hallway felt like trespassing. Her body screamed for rest, but terror pushed her forward. She clutched the wall for balance, her nails scraping over peeling paint. The house seemed endless, shadows stretching like guards in every corner. At the front gate, her hands fumbled. The lock was heavy, rust biting into her skin. She pulled, twisted, prayed under her breath. For a moment, panic threatened to choke her. What if Yusuf returned now? What if the lock refused? Then, with a sharp metallic click, it gave way. The gate swung open, and cool night air rushed over her face. Clara stumbled into the narrow street, the sky above wide and merciless. For the first time in months, there was no barrier between her and freedom. But freedom demanded strength. Her body barely had. She staggered forward, her vision blurring, her stomach cramped with hunger, her throat raw. Each step felt like a miracle pulled from the edge of collapse. A figure appeared at the corner. Yusuf's cousin. His eyes widened at the sight of her, skeletal, hair tangled, clothes hanging from her frame. For a moment he froze, torn between fear and conscience. Clara whispered, her voice no louder than a breath. "Please, help me." His jaw tightened, conflict flashing across his face. He looked over his shoulder, as if Yusuf's shadow followed him even here. Then without a word he stepped aside, allowing her to pass. Clara stumbled past him, her legs buckling. She didn't look back. The road stretched into darkness, her body lurching forward as if dragged by something stronger than will. She collapsed once, twice, scraping her knees against the stone. Each time she forced herself up again. Headlights cut through the night. A car slowed, voices in Arabic rising in alarm. Clara raised her hand weakly, tears streaming down her dirt-streaked face. "Help!" she croaked. The driver leapt out, catching her before she fell again. His wife wrapped a shawl around her trembling shoulders, speaking words Clara couldn't understand but felt like safety. The world blurred, sirens in the distance, lights flashing, strangers lifting her into their car. The cage was behind her now, but its weight clung to every bone. As the car sped toward the city, Clara's eyes fluttered shut. She dreamed of her mother's voice, of open windows and sunlit mornings. She dreamed of a life beyond Yusuf's grasp. But even in her dreams, his words lingered like a curse. "You are mine." She woke briefly to the wail of sirens, the taste of water pressed against her lips, the sight of uniformed men leaning close. Freedom was real, but Yusuf's shadow stretched still, waiting to strike in the place where memories lived. In a sterile hospital bed, Clara recounted the horrors of captivity, her frail body proof of survival. The courtroom became her second cage, Yusuf smiling as though still in control. His defense twisted love into possession, but Clara's trembling testimony shattered the illusion. Love does not starve you. The cousin's reluctant confession sealed Yusuf's fate, sentencing him to decades behind bars. Cameras flashed as Clara left the courthouse, her silence louder than any statement. Alone, she faced the mirror, haunted eyes, scarred body, yet alive. Justice was real, but healing would demand more than a verdict. Freedom had its price.